Sometimes a sloped lot can be a challenge, but just west of Knoxville, Tennessee, Mary and Chris Albrecht have created a garden over the past 20 years that takes advantage of just such a site. Well, Mary Albrecht and I go back to my college days, so it is a real honor for me to be here walking through your garden with you. Thank you so much for letting us come. And you and Chris have developed this garden over the past 20 years and from the ground up, literally.
Literally from the ground up. It was a bare farm. It used to be a farm, and it was bare land. We had this channel running through here, and that was one of the features we really wanted.
Right.
We had to remind the contractor not to fill it in. He wanted to just fill it in, and we're like, no, leave it be. And so we've laid the rock, we've developed the garden, and this is the oldest part right here.
Right. So you had some, obviously a few big trees, but you've planted most of the trees yourself, and over 20 years created kind of a shady garden.
Yes. Well, we had a lot of shade. We had that stump of a hackberry that only was removed a year ago. And so we had a lot of shade to begin with. And then of course we love trees. So we planted a lot of trees, somewhere around 20 to 25 different trees over the years. Most of them about 15 to 20 years ago.
Right.
And we start with the shade garden. I've always loved hostas, so that was the focal point, was the hostas, ferns, and then the companion plants that go along with hostas. And then I have friends who know I love plants.
Right.
So I get plants as gifts and try to find a place to put them in.
Right. And I say the same thing all the time. Plants collect me.
Yeah.
You know, I collect plants, but plants also collect me.
They find their way to your garden.
They do. So you have some interesting things in here. I love the brunnera with the silver foliage. That's a nice companion plant.
Yes, it is.
Sometimes we don't see that as much over in the other end of the state because it doesn't like our heat and humidity in the summertime quite so much. And your Edgeworthia?
It has, I was afraid I was going to lose it after the December freeze.
Right.
In fact, you can't see it, but one of the bottom stems has a huge crack in it. And I was thinking I was going to have to prune it back, but I've been waiting and waiting, and it's doing fine.
And it's rallied.
It's come back.
So the unusual thing about the Edgeworthia is that it flowers in the middle of winter, like late January, early February.
Yeah, typically late, that's about when it flowers. But you know, when it flowers and you're walking past, all you can do is smell
incredibly
the fragrance. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Lots of hostas, you already mentioned.
Hostas,
and everything from little tiny ones.
Yeah, I've got a lot of minis, and most of them are in pots in another part of the garden. But I tend to gravitate towards the really big ones.
Right.
But you know, that becomes a space issue.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I love those hostas that get 5 feet across and have big foliage.
I've got a few of those. I've got a few of those.
Other kinds of favorite companion plants in here.
My husband dearly loves the astilbes, and he loves red astilbes. So I always try to find some red astilbes to add to the garden. And you know, I have to admit, I like them too.
Right.
A lot of ferns, the hellebores, the Lenten roses. We started with a lot of them over in that area that were just seedlings that just reseeded from a friend of ours, a neighbor. Oh, you need some of these for your yard. Okay.
Right.
And over the years, we've added name varieties. And of course, those I maintain so that they don't reseed.
Right.
Because I want to keep the name varieties in their place.
Sure.
But and I do have a few butterfly milkweed to help with the butterflies. And we
good pollinator plant, and
and the bees love the hosta flowers.
Hostas,
they're normally covered in with bees or hummingbirds. We'll get hummingbirds in on them.
I was just going to say, the hostas in bloom at the house now. My hummingbirds keep going back and forth too.
They love them.
So we've moved across your dry creek bed now. Not always dry. You said it does actually carry water. It's there for a purpose. And now you have this kind of green island back here on the back side of the yard. Again, lots more hostas, some of your big ones that you mentioned earlier, but some other really interesting architectural plants too, like the acanthus. Yeah,
this is acanthus morning candle, and it's been here for about 2 years now. This we call our keyhole bed, and we have the Delaware pink azalea, which is a cutting off of another plant that we have, and we're going to let it just eventually fill in this area. But we've got a bunch of different hellebore varieties, and of course more hostas.
Sure.
And then the lilies, unfortunately, have already bloomed out.
Right.
But they were very striking before they were blooming, before the acanthus was in flower. So it was a nice sequence of events. And then on the other side, we've got a large, another large hosta called Dancing Queen.
Okay.
Or is it Dancing Darling? It's one or the other. I've got both.
nice ruffled edge
yes,
on that
it is.
one.
And it's done flowering. It had some very nice tall spikes on it. So.
You know, a lot of people don't think about flowers on hostas, but
You're
I
right.
love them when they are in bloom. Again, we mentioned earlier, the bees love them, the hummingbirds love them.
And the breeders are working towards a red flower. That's one of their goals. Now, I haven't seen one yet, but they're working on it. Just like they're working on the red petioles on the leaves and trying to get more red into the plant. But yeah, hostas come in you know, from white through pale lavenders and into deeper purples.
Right.
So there's a lot of variation that most people don't even think about.
Sure.
But I'm not interested in breeding them. So when they're done flowering, I don't want the seed to, you know, take away from the plant. So I remove the flower stalks when I'm done.
Yeah, and then that way all the energy goes back into the plant and not to going to seed.
Yeah, exactly.
So how many varieties of hosta do you have?
Oh, I have some around 225 varieties, I think.
That's a pretty good collection.
It's a good collection. It's grown over time, and I didn't realize how many I had till I started paying attention to the number of labels I have to make.
Right, right. Well, you know, and like we've already mentioned, the nice thing about hosta is they come in every size from, you know, 1.5 inches or 2 inches tall to 5 feet.
Yeah.
So you can really mix them in and tuck them in, and, you know, tuck little plants up in next to bigger plants. And
I tend to plant so they're spaced at
maximum.
Not maximum, but close to maximum, because I want them to fill in. I'm not one that digs and divides and moves things.
I want to see a clump.
I want a clump. I want them to look spectacular. I want them to look what they're supposed to look like. Like that's some of all.
Right.
And it's got huge foliage.
Right.
And it's starting to really show off.
Sure.
And that's what I want.
Sure. And you've got a nice patch of sweet woodruff over here. I know we were talking a little bit about dry shade, and that seems to be a plant that you know, really is taking the dryness over here a little bit better
than some of the hostas are. So I have to rethink this area because of the redbud just having such a high water demand on the soil.
Sure. You know, it's nice to even create these little vignettes with potted plants, and in this case, Mary has used carnivorous plants like these pitcher plants just in containers. She says they're hardy, they stay out all winter long, and as long as you keep them damp, they're bog plants, so as long as you keep them damp during the summertime, they grow just fine in containers. Well, in addition to plants, you also have some nice pieces of garden art here and there.
Yeah, over the years, we've added a few pieces. We have the fish from Fish in the Garden, and they're just whimsical. They're cute. They're fun. Our granddaughter dearly loves them.
Right, and then they're in the river of
and they're in the river of
chorus.
the chorus, the Japanese sweet flag, and they always kind of get a lot of people commenting on those. So when we travel, we always pick up plants or find
something for the garden.
Something for the garden, and we just enjoy adding a few things for people to talk about. You know, it's more than just the plants. There's other things that you can do in a garden. Sure.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to be here. So good to see you after all this time.
It was great.
And who knew that, one day, so many years later, here we would end up on television together of all things. So thank you so much for having us.
You are welcome. It's been a real pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed us reminiscing and having a good time and visiting and helping you out.
Thank you. If you liked this video, we've got a wide range of gardening related topics here on our channel. Home garden tours, plant showcases, tips from growers, and much more. Take a dive into our archive and be sure to click to subscribe so you can catch all of our new topics. Until next time.